December 13th, 1996. In the quiet mountain town of Silver Creek, Colorado, 18 students boarded bus number 91 for the short ride home. It was supposed to be the last journey before winter break, one more trip down the winding road before the holidays. But the bus never made it. The children never came home. And for nearly 30 years, the Colorado mountains kept their secret buried. Silver Creek Middle School, a modest brick building surrounded by pine trees, the Rockies towering in the distance. The bell rang at 3:05 p.m. Doors swung open as students poured out, scarves wrapped tight, backpacks bouncing. Teachers waved goodbye, reminding them to study for finals. Bus number 91 idled in the parking lot, engine rumbling, windows fogged from the December chill. Behind the wheel was longtime driver Earl Watkins, a 58-year-old Vietnam veteran known for his punctuality and quiet demeanor. One by one, the 18 students climbed aboard. Laughter, chatter, the kind of energy that only comes before a holiday. It was the last time their parents ever saw them. The route was familiar, 12 miles through twisting mountain roads, then down into the valley where most families lived. Witnesses saw the bus leave the school grounds at 3:12 p.m. The weather was clear, no snow, no ice, nothing unusual. At 3:25, a rancher reported seeing the bus climbing the ridge near Hollow Pass. He waved. The driver didn't wave back. By 3:40, the bus had vanished. At the first stop on Maple Hollow Road, parents stood bundled in coats waiting. The bus was late. 10 minutes, then 20. By 4 hours, panic began. Phones rang across town. Have you seen the bus? Did your kids get home? No one had. By dusk, Silver Creek was in chaos. Sheriff's deputies mobilized quickly. By nightfall, search parties with flashlights and dogs scoured the mountain roads. They expected to find tire tracks, a skid, a crash site, something. But the roads were clear. No broken guardrails, no disturbed snow. It was as if the bus had simply disappeared. Attention turned to Earl Watkins, the bus driver. His personnel file showed no disciplinary issues. Neighbors described him as quiet, polite, solitary. But investigators learned something unsettling. Earl was never seen leaving the school lot that day by staff. The only witnesses were students. And his military records contained gaps. Assignments classified, locations undisclosed. Within days, rumors swept through Silver Creek. Some said Watkins had snapped, driving the children into the wilderness. Others whispered about bright lights seen over Hollow Pass that night. Older residents spoke of a century-old story, of travelers who vanished when they followed the lights in the mountains. Parents clung to hope. But as Christmas approached, Silver Creek turned into a town of funerals without bodies. Despite weeks of air searches, divers in mountain lakes, and road crews checking ravines, no trace of bus 91 was ever found. No glass, no metal, no bodies. The FBI joined in January 1997, but by spring the case stalled. Files were boxed and stored. Families were told to move on. But no one in Silver Creek ever did. 18 children, one driver, a school bus that left the parking lot and never arrived. For decades, Silver Creek was haunted by that night. Some believed the mountain swallowed them whole. Others whispered about something darker. But in 2025, when the bus was finally unearthed, the truth would prove far more terrifying than any rumor. The sun had already dipped behind the mountains when Marjorie Hall, mother of 12-year-old Peter, checked the clock for the 10th time. The bus was late. She wrapped her coat tighter, snowflakes catching in her hair, and scanned the curve of Maple Hollow Road. Other parents were there too, lined up in cars with headlights on, stamping their feet in the cold. At 3:45, they laughed nervously. It's probably just traffic. At 4, the laughter stopped. By 4:30, silence and fear hung heavy. Marjorie whispered, "Something's wrong." When the sheriff's cruiser pulled up, no one had to say it out loud. Sheriff Dan Riggs was a seasoned man, used to lost hikers and the occasional drunk stranded in the woods. But this? An entire school bus gone? He drove the length of the mountain road 3 times that night. Nothing. No skid marks. No broken guardrails. He radioed in frustration. It's like the damn thing flew off the road and vanished into the trees. By 6 p.m., the entire county knew. By 9 search parties with lanterns, dogs, and ATVs fanned across the ridge. At the high school gym, hastily converted into a crisis center, parents huddled together. Coffee urns bubbled. Volunteers updated maps pinned to the walls. That's where the first rumors started. One father swore he saw strange lights in the canyon that afternoon. A mother said her daughter had complained the bus driver, Earl Watkins, was acting weird all week, quieter than usual, humming under his breath. By midnight, whispers spread like wildfire. Some said Watkins snapped. Others muttered about the lights. Everyone agreed on one thing. The mountains had taken their children. 2 days later, with no sign of the bus, the FBI stepped in. Agent Robert Keller, crisp suit and icy stare, addressed the families. "We will treat this as both a disappearance and a potential abduction. Nothing is off the table. We need your cooperation." But cooperation was fragile. Families wanted answers, not protocols. When Keller announced that they'd re-interview every parent and teacher, one father shouted, "You think we did this? Our kids are gone." The tension was palpable. Investigators quickly ran into contradictions. The rancher's account. He claimed he saw the bus near Hollow Pass at 3:25. I waved. The driver didn't wave back. A teacher's statement said Watkins looked pale and distracted all week, even stumbling over names during roll call. Another student's parent reported their child had drawn bright lights in the trees days before the disappearance. The FBI logged it all, but none of it fit neatly. Digging into Watkins's past, the FBI discovered gaps. His military file contained redactions, missions labeled classified. One rumor suggested he'd been part of Project Stargate, a Cold War program experimenting with remote viewing. Locals whispered that maybe Watkins hadn't just driven the bus off the road, maybe he'd led the children somewhere else entirely. But with no wreckage, no tracks, no evidence, it was all speculation. By the end of the first week, helicopters circled the mountains daily. Divers probed frozen lakes. Deputies checked abandoned mines. Nothing. At night, parents still gathered by the gym, eyes hollow, voices hoarse from pleading. Marjorie Hall stood on stage clutching her son's baseball cap, whispering into a microphone. "Please, if you have them, bring them back. We don't care why. Just bring them back." Her voice cracked. No one clapped. Only silence. On December 22nd, a hunter reported finding tire tracks near an old logging road. Excitement surged. Finally, a break. But when investigators followed, the tracks ended abruptly in a frozen meadow. No bus, no debris. The FBI sealed the area, noting how the ground seemed disturbed, almost like it had been dug up and filled again. But nothing was recovered. By New Year's, the mood shifted. Hope drained. National news crews packed up. Agent Keller gave a final press conference. "We have exhausted every lead. Without new evidence, this investigation cannot continue at full capacity." Parents shouted at him, tears streaming, "You're giving up." But by spring 1997, the files were boxed, stored, and labeled Cold Case .2196. 18 children and 1 driver were gone, and Silver Creek was left with only rumors, grief, and silence. By 1997, the Silver Creek bus was more legend than case file. Some swore Watkins drove into a hidden canyon. Others whispered about lights in the trees. But with no wreckage and no remains, the FBI had nothing to hold on to. For nearly 3 decades, the case sat in darkness, until 2024, when the Colorado mountains finally gave back their secret. By early January 1997, the houses of Silver Creek were frozen in grief. Bedrooms that once echoed with music, laughter, or the thud of sneakers now stood silent. Marjorie Hall would sit in her son Peter's room every night. His baseball glove still sat on the desk, his school books stacked neatly on the shelf. His backpack, still half-zipped, lay at the foot of his bed, as if he might come running in at any moment to grab it. She whispered to herself, "He'll need it when he comes back." Other parents did the same. They left toys on shelves untouched, clothes folded waiting, beds made but never slept in. Silver Creek wasn't just a town, it had become a shrine to 18 missing children. In the weeks after the disappearance, as police gathered personal items for records, they noticed a disturbing pattern. Several of the missing students had drawings in their notebooks, crude sketches but eerily consistent. Trees with strange lights hovering above them, dark figures standing at the edge of roads, a bus, sometimes with its wheels buried beneath the earth. One drawing, found in 13-year-old Kelly Ramirez's diary, showed a road curving into a mountain and ending at a wall of stone. Across the wall were scrawled the words, "Don't follow the lights." Investigators chalked it up to children's imagination, but when the same phrase appeared again, carved into a desk at Silver Creek Middle, it was logged as evidence.
FBI agents pressed the teachers for details. Had the students been acting strange? Had Watkins, the driver, said anything unusual? Most of the staff denied it. "They were normal kids," said Principal Darnell. "Happy, healthy, nothing out of the ordinary." But one substitute teacher, Mrs. Ellen Parker, later confessed privately to investigators. The kids were restless that week. They whispered in class, passing notes I could never catch. When I asked what was going on, one of them said, "We have to be ready for the trip." I thought they meant winter break. Now, I'm not so sure. When asked why she hadn't shared that detail earlier, Parker shook her head. "Because after the bus vanished, I started finding notes in my mailbox at school. Blank envelopes. Inside, just one sentence. Don't talk about the lights." The FBI searched Earl Watkins's home, a small cabin outside town. Inside, they found military memorabilia, stacks of old newspapers, and a dusty shelf of VHS tapes. Most were blank, but one, labeled 91, contained distorted footage of the bus itself. Students laughing, waving at the camera. The tape cut off abruptly, replaced by static. Then, a faint whisper, barely audible. "Two will not return." Experts couldn't determine whether it was a trick of the tape or something Watkins had recorded deliberately. By spring 1997, many parents reported vivid, recurring dreams. They described standing on a dark road, headlights behind them, a bus approaching silently. But when the door opened, there were no children inside. Only empty seats and shadows that shifted in the corners. Marjorie Hall claimed she once woke to find muddy footprints in her hallway, child-sized, leading from the front door to Peter's empty bedroom. Sheriff Riggs dismissed it as grief-fueled imagination. But when 3 other families reported the same, investigators quietly added it to the case file. Silver Creek fractured under the weight of the mystery. Some families accused the school board of hiding something. Meetings turned violent, shouts echoing through the gymnasium where parents once gathered. Others clung to faith. Candlelight vigils were held weekly. 18 candles, always lit, flickering in the cold air. By summer, the candles had burned down to stubs, but the vigils continued. Still others turned to folklore. Old-timers spoke openly about the lantern men, mountain spirits said to lure travelers off safe paths with glowing orbs. They warned that the students must have followed the lights.
On December 13, 1997, exactly 1 year after the disappearance, families gathered at the school. The gym was filled with photographs of the missing children, flowers, handwritten notes. The principal gave a speech about memory and hope. But when the clock struck 3:12 p.m., the exact time the bus had left the school a year earlier, the lights in the gym flickered. Several parents swore they heard faint laughter, the sound of children echoing through the rafters. By 1998, the investigation stalled completely. Funding dried up. The FBI reassigned agents. The official word was simple: without new evidence, the case cannot continue. Unofficially, families whispered that someone higher up had forced the case shut. Too many unanswered questions. Too many contradictions in the files. One document later leaked, an internal FBI memo, read, Subject bus, 91, highly unusual. Recommend suppression. Locals not prepared for full truth. By the early 2000s, Silver Creek felt like a town stuck in 1996. The school bus stop signs were never removed. Parents kept their children's bedrooms untouched, and every December the mountains echoed with the same question: where are they? But Silver Creek wouldn't get an answer until nearly 3 decades later, when a rockslide revealed the secret the mountains had been hiding all along. 18 children and 1 driver, no wreckage, no evidence, only silence, rumors and warnings carved into desks and diaries. Don't follow the lights. For Silver Creek, the disappearance was more than a tragedy. It was a haunting. But the mountains keep their secrets only for so long. In 2024, those secrets would finally claw their way back to the surface. March 2025. Heavy spring rains pounded the Rockies, loosening soil and stone across the slopes above Silver Creek. One morning, hikers reported a massive rockslide in Black Hollow Canyon, a rugged ravine nearly impossible to reach. When rescue crews inspected the damage, they saw something that froze them where they stood. Jutting out of the mud and stone, half crushed but unmistakable, was the roof of a yellow school bus. The number stenciled faintly on its side read 91. Within hours, the canyon was sealed off. News helicopters buzzed overhead. FBI agents, archaeologists, and crime scene techs swarmed the site. It took 3 days of careful digging before the full vehicle was exposed. The bus had been entombed beneath tons of rock and clay, wedged into the canyon wall as if deliberately hidden. When the doors were pried open, the stench of rust and rot billowed out. Inside, rows of cracked vinyl seats lined the aisle. Backpacks lay scattered on the floor. A broken pair of glasses glinted in the mud. 17 seats still held human remains, skeletal, slumped, some with faded scraps of clothing still clinging to bone. 1 seat was empty. As forensic teams documented the scene, they noticed something disturbing carved into the ceiling above the empty seat. Jagged letters, scratched by trembling hands. Don't follow the lights. The same phrase found in the children's drawings, notebooks, and carved into school desks in 1996. It wasn't imagination. It had been written from inside the bus. Earl Watkins's remains were not in the driver's seat. Instead, the seatbelt was fastened, around nothing. The keys were still in the ignition, but turned halfway, as if frozen in the act of starting or stopping the engine. Investigators found deep gouges in the steering wheel like fingernails clawing into the rubber, and smeared faintly across the cracked dashboard, a child's handprint in dried mud. Tucked beneath the empty seat, inside the rusted frame, investigators found a small plastic bag. Inside was a water-damaged spiral notebook, its pages warped but still legible. The first entry read, "Day 1. We are still on the bus. They told us we aren't going home. They said this is part of the lesson." Further pages grew darker. The handwriting shook, lines breaking off mid-sentence. The final entry read only, "The lights are outside again. Mr. Watkins says don't look, but some already did. If you see them, they follow you inside. We can't all fit. One has to leave." With 17 sets of remains recovered, 1 was unaccounted for. The FBI announced publicly, 1 student is still missing. Families clutched at that detail. Was it hope? Or something worse? Because if that child had survived, where had they been for 29 years? And why hadn't they come forward? Silver Creek erupted. News vans parked along every street. Reporters ambushed grieving parents who had aged decades waiting for answers. One father, now gray-haired, stared into cameras with hollow eyes. "I knew they didn't just drive off the road. Someone put them there, someone made them disappear, now prove it." But even as the remains were bagged and tagged, questions multiplied. How had an entire bus been buried beneath rock without detection for 3 decades? Why were carvings and notebooks inside suggesting the children had been alive for days? And who, or what, were the lights? At a press conference, Special Agent Rebecca Hayes, the same agent who'd reopened the Whitfield newlyweds case years earlier, stood at the podium. Her voice was steady, but her eyes betrayed unease. Bus Nur 91 has been located. 17 students confirmed deceased. 1 student remains unaccounted for. We are investigating whether this was a natural disaster, criminal act, or other cause. At this time, we cannot rule anything out. A reporter shouted, "Are you suggesting the children were buried alive?" Hayes didn't answer. She only repeated the phrase, "We cannot rule anything out." For 29 years, the mountains kept their silence. But when Bus Nur 91 emerged from the earth in 2025, it carried more than the remains of Silver Creek's children. It carried warnings, carvings, and a missing child whose absence raised a terrifying question. Who decided that not all of them would stay? In a secure FBI lab, evidence technicians carefully pried open the warped green spiral notebook found under the empty seat. Its pages smelled of damp earth and mildew. Some were smeared, ink bled into unreadable blots. But dozens of entries remained intact. The first page was dated December 13, 1996, the very day the bus vanished. "We should be home by now. Mom will worry. Mr. Watkins says the road is blocked, but I don't believe him. The windows are dark. The mountains are louder here." The handwriting was shaky, but investigators confirmed it belonged to 12-year-old Amy Jensen, one of the missing. The notebook suggested the students had been alive for days after the bus disappeared. Day 2. "We heard noises outside last night. Mr. Watkins told us not to look. Brian said he saw lights through the cracks and now he won't talk." Day 3. "Someone is scratching the bus at night. It sounds like nails on metal. We stay quiet. The lights come closer when we talk." Day 4. "We can't all fit if they come inside. Mr. Watkins says one will have to leave. Nobody wants to. Nobody wants to look at the lights." Parents wept as they read the words and transcripts. For decades, they believed their children had died quickly. Now it seemed they had suffered for days, trapped in that buried bus. At a town hall in April 2025, the surviving families demanded answers. The school board, aged and frail, sat on stage while furious voices rose from the crowd. One mother screamed, "You told us the driver was trustworthy. You told us our kids were safe. And all along you had his file sealed." Another shouted, "Why did his military records vanish? Why were we told to stop asking questions in '97? The board refused to answer, citing federal confidentiality. It only fueled suspicion. FBI agents dug deeper into driver Earl Watkins's past. His personnel files were fragmented, but what they found disturbed them. In 1974, Watkins had been stationed at a remote base in New Mexico during classified tests involving sensory deprivation and psychological endurance. Rumors whispered he had volunteered in vision experiments. Colleagues recalled him muttering about the lights even then. Had Watkins been hiding something for decades? Or had he been chosen? Back in the notebook, later entries grew more frantic. Day 5. "We can't tell time anymore. It's always dark. Mr. Watkins won't let us near the door. He keeps counting us over and over." Day 6. "Brian is gone. His seat is empty. Mr. Watkins says he went with the lights. We all heard him scream." Day 7. "We're running out of air. Some kids are praying, some are laughing. I keep writing so I don't hear the noises outside." The final full page ended with 3 words, "Don't look out." Experts clashed publicly over what the notebook meant. Psychologists said the children's writings reflected hallucinations caused by fear, oxygen deprivation, and Watkins's unstable behavior. Folklorists pointed to old Colorado mining legends of lantern men, strange lights said to lure workers into cave-ins. Parents demanded a simpler answer, that someone orchestrated the burial and left the kids to die. No explanation could erase the chilling fact. The notebook was real, and the children had written their fear into its pages. By summer 2025, Silver Creek was once more a town on edge. Locals reported headlights flickering on empty roads at night. Hikers swore they saw faint orbs floating between trees where the bus was found. At the old school, janitors found new graffiti scratched into lockers. They never left. No one admitted writing it. Despite FBI efforts to suppress details, pages of the notebook leaked online. Forums buzzed with theories. Some users insisted the lights were government drones used in secret experiments. Others claimed they were something paranormal, entities that had stalked the canyon for generations. One chilling comment stood out. "I was in Silver Creek in '96. I saw the bus that night. It wasn't driving. It was being led." The post was deleted within hours. Agent Rebecca Hayes, reviewing the case, scribbled a line in her confidential file. "This is not an accident. This was containment. The bus wasn't lost. It was hidden. The question is, hidden from what? Or from who?" The Silver Creek notebook revealed a nightmare. 18 children alive for days inside a bus that should never have been buried. The words they left behind told of fear, of scratching at the windows, of lights that lured them one by one. But the last page left investigators with a single, unanswerable warning: don't look out. In May 2025, FBI analysts managed to dry and restore the notebook's last pages. The ink had bled, but under ultraviolet light, words emerged. The handwriting was barely legible. The letters slanted wildly as if written in darkness, in panic. Day 8. "We hear them walking on the roof now. Mr. Watkins says they're waiting. He says don't make a sound." Day 9. Another seat empty. "We are 16 now. The air is thin. Some say they saw hands reaching through the windows. I keep my eyes shut." And then, the final line. Day 10. "The lights want to trade. One seat stays empty. One leaves forever." The page ended in a smear of mud, as if the notebook had been ripped from the writer's hands. Forensic teams examined the skeletal remains recovered from the bus. The results unsettled even veteran pathologists. Some bones showed fractures, but not from rockfall. They looked older, inflicted before the bus was entombed. Others bore strange, shallow scratches as if clawed by small hands. And several remains showed evidence of suffocation. Ribs arched inward, throats clenched. It was as if the students hadn't all died the same way. Earl Watkins's body was never found. His fingerprints were on the ignition, on the bus door, even on the carved phrase above the empty seat. But his bones weren't among the remains. One theory suggested he escaped before the bus was buried. Another claimed he was the first to be taken. Either way, Watkins had vanished as completely as the children. A rumor began to circulate in Silver Creek. A hiker swore that in 2002, deep in the canyon, he encountered a ragged man living in a shack. The man muttered about keeping the lights away and refused food unless it was left outside. Locals dismissed it as a story. But when the hiker was shown a photo of Earl Watkins in 2025, he paled and whispered, "That's him. That's the man." The FBI never confirmed the claim. Families split into bitter camps. Some demanded closure, bury the remains, end this nightmare. Others refused, insisting one child might still be alive. The missing seat haunted them. A father slammed his fist at a town meeting. If one made it out, then where are they now, and why haven't they come home? The silence that followed was heavier than any answer. In June, investigators returned to the bus itself for a deeper sweep. Under layers of rust, they discovered faint carvings on multiple seats, initials, tally marks, desperate scratches etched by fingernails. But on the driver's seat, carved deeper than anywhere else, was a single phrase: "They wouldn't let me leave." Digging through town records, Agent Hayes discovered that Black Hollow Canyon wasn't just any ravine. In the 1930s, miners had abandoned it after a series of unexplained cave-ins. Survivors spoke of glowing orbs in the tunnels, lights that beckoned men into the dark. Locals called them lantern men. The reports were dismissed as folklore. But Hayes couldn't ignore the parallels. She wrote in her notes, the children's drawings, the carved warnings, the notebook. It all matches stories nearly a century old. This canyon has been dangerous for a long time, but not because of rock slides. In July 2025, a former FBI intern leaked audio from the excavation site. It captured an investigator's voice, trembling. "I swear I just heard something move inside, like a knock under the floorboards." Another voice replied, "The bus is empty. Don't talk about it." At the end of the tape, a faint sound echoed. A metallic tap, 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 like fingernails on steel. The leak spread online instantly, fueling theories that one child, the missing 18th, had survived underground far longer than anyone thought possible. By autumn 2025, Hayes felt the case slipping beyond the reach of law enforcement. She stood in front of the bus, now stored in a guarded hangar. She touched the rusted metal, the faint carvings, the hollow echo of its shell. And she whispered to herself, "This wasn't an accident. The bus wasn't just buried, it was sealed, contained. Whatever the kids saw, whatever Watkins knew, someone wanted it trapped here forever." Meanwhile, Silver Creek itself grew restless. Teenagers dared each other to visit the canyon after dark. Some returned shaking, insisting they'd seen faint lights drifting through the trees. Dogs barked at empty roadsides. Porch lights flickered at exactly 2:07 a.m. And parents, now old and weary, swore they still heard laughter, the voices of their children, echoing faintly in the wind that rolled down from the mountains. The Silver Creek bus hadn't just vanished. It had been buried, sealed in a canyon cursed by stories older than the town itself. The notebook told of lights, of bargains, of one empty seat. But the greatest mystery was not what was found in the bus. It was what was still missing. By late October 2025, bus number 91 had been relocated to a secure federal hangar outside Denver. Guards patrolled the perimeter 24/7. Inside, the bus sat under floodlights, its yellow paint flaking, rust spreading like scars across its body. The seats remained intact, evidence markers still taped to the backs where children had once sat. Every investigator who entered the hangar described the same thing. The bus seemed alive. The air inside was heavy, damp, carrying a faint metallic tang, as though the vehicle itself was breathing. Agent Rebecca Hayes kept returning. She told colleagues, "This bus is more than evidence. It's a tomb, and tombs hold stories." FBI archivists discovered that the green spiral notebook had a false back cover. Pressed against the cardboard, hidden for decades, were 6 additional pages. These weren't written like the others. The handwriting was jagged, erratic, as though the writer's hand was shaking uncontrollably. Day 11. The lights aren't outside anymore. They're in the aisle. They move between us when we close our eyes. Day 12. Mr. Watkins keeps counting, but he gets the numbers wrong. He says one is missing, but no one will say who. We are all here. We are not all here. Day 13. They want us to trade. They say only 17 can stay. One must walk out, but the door is buried. How do we walk out? The last page ended with a name, scratched deep enough to rip the paper. Brian. Brian was one of the missing students, and the one whose seat had been empty when the bus was recovered. Strange reports began to surface from personnel guarding the bus. One night, a guard swore he heard children laughing from inside the locked vehicle. Another claimed he saw a faint glow seeping from the cracks around the bus windows, as if lights moved within. A mechanic inspecting the undercarriage insisted he felt small hands brushing against his ankles. All of them were reassigned within days. None spoke publicly again. Agent Hayes became obsessed. She spent hours inside the bus, recorder in hand, whispering her thoughts. In one audio log, she said, "The carvings on the ceiling, they're layered. I think multiple children wrote the same warning over and over like they were chanting it. Don't follow the lights. Don't follow the lights." But if they didn't follow, what happened to Brian? At 2:07 a.m. one night, her recorder captured a faint sound in the hangar. 3 knocks against the bus door. Hayes never acknowledged it in her report. Meanwhile, a retired miner named Walter Briggs, now in his 90s, contacted local reporters. He claimed that back in the 1940s, before Black Hollow Canyon was closed, he and other miners had seen strange orbs drifting through the tunnels. Lantern men, he called them. But then he said something new. It wasn't just lights. Sometimes you'd hear kids' voices like they were playing hide and seek in the dark. We thought it was the mountain fooling with us, but I wonder now. Maybe it was the same ones your bus kids saw. When asked if anyone ever followed the lights, Briggs looked away. 2 men did. We never saw them again. Digging through federal archives, Hayes uncovered a classified document dated 1978. It described a transport incident in Nevada involving a prison bus. The report was heavily redacted, but one line remained. 17 accounted for. 1 missing. Lights present. Hayes underlined it 3 times. This wasn't the first time. It had happened before. Back in Silver Creek, townsfolk were split. Some begged the government to destroy the bus, to end the haunting. Burn it, bury it deeper, get it out of here, one man yelled at a town hall. Others, particularly parents of the missing, demanded the bus be preserved as a memorial. Our children's last breath is in that metal. Don't erase them again. Arguments turned to fights. Old wounds tore open. Silver Creek was no longer just haunted. It was collapsing under the weight of its own grief. In her motel room near Denver, Hayes began to dream vividly. She dreamed of sitting on bus number 91 as a child, the seats around her filled with skeletons still in school clothes. Outside the windows, glowing orbs hovered in the trees. In the dream, the driver's seat was empty, the wheel turned by itself, and a child's voice whispered in her ear. 17 stay, 1 walks out. Which one are you? She woke screaming, the sound of a bus engine echoing faintly in her ears. The bus was no longer just evidence. It was an artifact of terror. Hidden pages told of bargains, lights inside the aisle, and a boy named Brian, whose absence haunted every clue. But as the FBI dug deeper, they uncovered a chilling truth. Silver Creek wasn't the first, and maybe it wouldn't be the last. In November 2025, while reviewing old school rosters, Agent Hayes noticed something chilling. Brian Cole, the 12th grader whose name was carved into the notebook's final page, had a record that simply ended in 1996. No yearbook photo, no medical files, no social security activity. It was as if his identity had been deliberately erased. When Hayes requested his birth certificate, the county clerk handed her a copy, with a large black X drawn across the page. In the margin, written faintly in pencil, were 2 words: "Don't follow." Days later, a man in his 40s appeared in Pueblo, Colorado, wandering the streets barefoot. He was filthy, incoherent, muttering about lights and mountains. When police picked him up, he gave only one name: Brian. DNA confirmed the impossible. It was Brian Cole, the missing student, alive nearly 30 years later. But his body told a different story: severe malnutrition, scarring on his arms and back, lungs scarred as if from years of breathing dust. When doctors asked where he had been, Brian whispered, "On the bus. I never left the bus." The FBI placed Brian in a secure hospital ward. Hayes herself questioned him. Hayes: "Brian, can you tell me what happened in 1996? Brian: "We were underground. The lights put us there." Hayes: "The lights? People? Machines?" Brian: "They were waiting for us in the canyon. They told Watkins where to go. He obeyed. We had no choice." When Hayes pressed further, Brian's voice broke into sobs. "They don't like when we look at them. They punish us. They made us choose. 17 stay. 1 walks out. I was the one who walked out." Brian's testimony painted a horrific picture. The students had been trapped in the bus for days, just as the notebook suggested. But at some point, the lights demanded one child leave, never to return. Watkins had forced the choice, or perhaps the lights had chosen for him. Brian was shoved out of the bus into the canyon. He remembered falling, waking in the dark, crawling through tunnels that shouldn't have existed. He claimed he wandered for years, always hearing the bus engine, always seeing faint glows ahead. Time blurred. When he finally emerged, it was 2025. Doctors insisted he was delusional, his mind broken by trauma. But Hayes wasn't so sure. Inside the spiral notebook's binding, technicians found a strip of magnetic tape, wound tightly and nearly destroyed by age. When restored, it revealed faint audio. Children crying, scratching, Watkins shouting, "Don't look at them! Don't look at the lights!" And then, Brian's voice, younger, trembling, "I'll go. Just don't hurt them. I'll go." The tape ended with the hiss of static, and a sound like dozens of small hands knocking against metal. The discovery deepened suspicion around Earl Watkins. Had he been a victim, a collaborator, or something worse? Brian claimed Watkins spoke with the lights, as if he understood them. He said Watkins told the children the canyon was a classroom and that they had lessons to learn. Hayes began to suspect Watkins wasn't chosen randomly. His classified military history, the erased files, the silence from higher authorities, all pointed to something intentional. Maybe Watkins hadn't just been a driver. Maybe he had been part of an experiment. When news broke that Brian Cole had been found alive, the town erupted again. Some hailed him as a miracle. Others feared him, whispering that he was marked by the lights. Parents of the other victims demanded to see him, but the FBI refused. At night, vigilantes patrolled the canyon, claiming they saw orbs drifting between the trees. One teenager disappeared while searching for the site where the bus had been dug up. His friends said he wandered into the darkness chasing something glowing. He never came back. In her private journal, Hayes wrote, "The pattern is clear. 18 children, 1 driver. Always 1 seat left empty. Always 1 child released. It isn't mercy. It's balance. A bargain made long before Silver Creek." She circled one phrase over and over. 17 stay, 1 walks out. In December 2025, Brian was moved to a psychiatric facility under high security. Hayes visited one final time. As she entered, Brian sat in the corner, rocking, staring at a blank wall. Without prompting, he whispered, "They're not finished. They'll come back. When the bus is moved again, they'll follow it. They don't like being disturbed." Hayes leaned closer. "Who are they, Brian? What are the lights?" Brian turned, eyes hollow. "They're not lights. They're eyes." The survivor's return shattered the silence. Brian Cole's story was fragmented, terrifying, and almost impossible to believe. Yet every detail matched the notebook, the carvings, the warnings. He had walked out, just as the bargain demanded. But his final words left a chilling possibility, that the lights weren't gone. They were waiting. January 2025. The FBI announced plans to move bus number 91 from the Denver hangar to a long-term storage facility in Washington. The decision divided everyone. Families begged to keep it in Colorado as a memorial. Others pleaded to have it destroyed. Agent Hayes didn't voice her opinion, but inside she wrote in her notebook, "If the bus is moved, the lights will follow. We're opening the cage." Despite warnings, preparations began. The bus was loaded onto a flatbed truck under heavy guard. That night, guards reported the floodlights flickering. Cameras caught brief flashes inside the bus windows, shapes moving, seats shifting, though no one was inside. In his psychiatric facility, Brian Cole grew frantic as the transfer date approached. He screamed at staff, clawed at walls, repeating the same line over and over. 17 stay. 1 walks out. Don't move it. Don't move it. Doctors sedated him, but his warnings grew louder, more desperate. On the night of the transfer, Brian vanished from his locked room. No forced entry, no broken windows, just a single handprint smeared in mud across the wall. The next morning, staff swore they heard children's laughter echoing down the empty halls. Brian was never found. The convoy carrying bus number 91 left Denver before dawn. 3 black SUVs, 2 armored trucks, and the flatbed with the rusted school bus chained to it. Agent Hayes rode in the lead vehicle, her recorder running. She spoke quietly. "If the pattern holds, 1 walks out. But what happens when we move the entire cage? Who walks out then?" At 2:07 a.m., the convoy passed through Silver Creek. That's when everything went wrong. Locals reported strange activity that night. Street lamps flickered, dogs barked wildly, and along the ridge dozens of glowing orbs drifted silently through the trees following the road. Inside the convoy, radios went dead. Engines sputtered. Drivers swore they saw figures standing in the middle of the road, children in tattered school clothes, faces pale, eyes glowing. The lead driver slammed the brakes. The entire convoy screeched to a halt. When Hayes looked back, the bus door was open. Panic erupted. Agents drew weapons, shouting into the dark. The orbs moved closer, surrounding the vehicles in a slow, deliberate circle. From inside the bus, a child's voice echoed, faint but unmistakable. One must walk out. Seats shifted, shadows pressed against the windows, the sound of knocking, dozens of tiny fists pounding the glass. Hayes realized the truth. The bargain wasn't over. The bus demanded it again. 17 stay. 1 leaves. She whispered into her recorder. It was never about survival. It was about balance. And the balance isn't finished. When the lights flared brightest, agents shielded their eyes. The night turned white hot. When vision cleared, the convoy was still there. The trucks, the SUVs, the flatbed. But the bus was gone. Chains lay snapped across the road. The flatbed sat empty, its surface scorched as if something had burned straight through it. Of the 12 agents escorting the bus, 3 were missing. Their weapons, radios, and body armor lay in the snow, and on the pavement carved deep into the asphalt as though by fire. 17 stay. 1 walks out. The government issued a statement. Mechanical failure, explosion, classified cargo. Silver Creek residents knew better. They gathered in silence at the old-school gym, lighting 18 candles once more. Parents, now gray-haired and frail, whispered prayers for children who never came home. Some swore they saw the bus again, rusted, broken, parked deep in the canyon under the pale light of the moon. Others claimed they heard the engine idling when they passed the ridge at night. Weeks later, Hayes's recorder was found abandoned in her motel room. The final tape inside captured her voice, shaky, whispering, "I saw them, all 18, sitting in the bus, waiting, their eyes glowing, their hands pressed to the glass. They were calling my name." A pause, a sob. Then, "It isn't over. It never ends. When the bus comes back, it will need passengers." The tape ended with faint laughter, dozens of children laughing in unison. Hayes herself was never seen again. Today, the story of Silver Creek is still told in hushed voices. The canyon remains closed. Locals warn travelers to stay away after dark. Hikers whisper of lights on the ridges, glowing orbs that seem to beckon them closer. And every December 13th, the anniversary of the disappearance, residents lock their doors. They say if you listen closely at 2:07 a.m., you'll hear the rumble of an engine and the sound of children's voices drifting through the cold mountain air. A bus with 18 empty seats, still waiting for its passengers. In 1996, 18 children vanished on bus number 91. In 2025, the mountains gave back the wreckage, but not the truth. One child survived, but his warnings came too late. Because in Silver Creek, bargains must be kept. 17 stay. 1 walks out. And the bus still waits.